אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה בקש, אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה בקש, שבתי שבתי בבית אדוני, שבתי שבתי כל ימי חיי, שבתי שבתי בבית אדוני, שבתי שבתי כל ימי חיי, לחזות בנועם אדוני, בנועם אדוני, בהיכלו, בהיכלו, לחזות בנועם אדוני, to gaze upon the beauty of Adonai.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I guess I didn't take it off. One thing, I ask you, Adonai, to be with you all of my life. One thing, I ask you, Adonai, to be with you all of my life. אחת שאלתי מאת אדוני, אחת שאלתי אותה בקש.
Welcome, everyone.
Good morning.
Good morning. That was Chava Mirel, who lives in Seattle. So some of the scenes that we were seeing were undoubtedly very near where she lives. And she was singing from the 27th Psalm. The 27th Psalm is the Psalm that you may have heard many times repeated. It's used, generally speaking, in the month of Elul in preparation for Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. And in particular, she was singing Achat Sha'alti, one thing I ask, and that is to live with a sense of joy, with a sense of pleasure, and dwell close to God. And that is the single phrase I suspect, I know that it has been recited at WRT in the month of Elul leading up to Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur, and actually continues through Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, Psalm 27. And just as a reminder, we have begun related to each of our four sessions with a psalm, which isn't necessarily to make a pitch that everybody needs to read the book of Psalms, although I think that would be a worthwhile project personally and even perhaps together. but because the Psalms present an authentic Jewish vehicle for a personal relationship to God. And they come from multiple perspectives. Sometimes these are Psalms written in anguish, and sometimes they're written in anger, and sometimes they are written with great love and passion and a sense of overwhelming joy. One should serve God with joy. That's the 100th Psalm. And you probably have heard the last of the Psalms, 150, that with everything that has breath, we should praise God. So there really almost every human emotion and every human expression is an attempt to find one's own voice and to find one's own vehicle, really, for expressing a connection to God. And Chava Mirel, I don't think she's been to WRT. She certainly travels all over the United States, indeed, all over the world. And if she hasn't come, perhaps it's someone that you would be interested in having come to WRT for not only musical reasons, but also theological reasons as well. We are now going to try a poll. Here we go. And I will launch it, and you'll have about 45 seconds. This is, to be clear, this is a multiple choice poll. So there's, again, no right or wrong answer. This is anonymous. And so you don't have to limit yourself to one response. Is that clear?
Yes.
Here we go. And it's only one question. I don't know why it says two questions. Shall? Sorry, I don't mean to have the question be unclear.
Sorry, my response was a little bit arrogant.
No,
I understood the question. I just don't understand the question. I understand.
It's first of all, this is I wish I had invented it. It hardly is my unique question. This is a classic question, and at least for me, the underlying question is this gives one an opportunity to say, what is your response in the Hebrew that you have for the name of the question is ayeka. This is the first question in the Bible. It's a question that God addresses to Adam and Eve. And it's not a question of physical location. It's a question of vocation, and it's a question of relationship. And so I'm adopting the question that God asks Adam and Eve as a universal question to all humanity. And you are allowed any response you wish, including, those that don't necessarily, exist on this page. But it's a question, by the way, that I certainly asked every rabbinical student, and not just once. Can everybody see? Can you see the response? Okay.
Yes.
And it's also, by the way, a question.
No, it's irrelevant.
You can't see anything? Judy, you can't see?
No, can't see. No, I can't see anything.
I don't know why.
It's probably my computer stuff. Sorry.
Okay. All right. Well, what I'm hopeful is that I can just read it. There is a wide range of response to the question, when have you felt close to God? From never to praying in private. The most common response is in nature, witnessing a birth, at a life cycle event, praying in public, reading, singing. Those were the responses that registered in this particular group. This was a question, by the way, that one of the former rabbis at WRT asked the confirmation class. And one of our daughters was in that confirmation class. It was Rabbi Ken Chazen, if some of you may remember him.
Wonderful.
And it was the year in which he and his spouse gave birth to one of their children. And he came to the class and said something like, I wasn't there. I'm only here. This is from our daughter. He said how this experience was a powerful spiritual experience for him to have witnessed the birth of a child, their child. And then he asked the students this question about in relationship to God, when have they ever felt close to God? And one of the things that came up in the conversation was that many of the children had had their parents speak to them about how giving birth was an experience which was a powerful spiritual experience for them. And one of the reasons that I not only respect, but I would say I love Rabbi Ken Chazen is...
Me too.
Yeah, well, I'm in good company in that case. But in any case, our daughter said, well, I'm adopted, and my parents weren't in the room when I was born, but I learned that the Talmud teaches that whoever has adopted a child, it's as though they had given birth. That's what our daughter said. And Ken, as I said, then did something that endeared him to me forever. He sat down and he said, Kara, you are my teacher. That takes a very, very big person. Remember, he's talking to high school students, to people in the 10th or 11th grade, and recognizing that even in a relatively small setting, there was somebody whose biological parents were different from their adoptive parents. And what did that mean in terms not only of that person, but also in relationship to birth, the relationship to God, et cetera. So the question, Michelle, that undoubtedly on a surface level you absolutely understood, underlying it is, I think, the question that God asks, the very first question in the Bible that God asks of Adam and Eve, which I think is an invitation to have it be a universal human question, not just a Jewish question, and one which can follow a person throughout their lives as part of the autobiography. Where are you? Is the way it's translated, but where are you, not in terms of a physical location? Yes, I'm in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Okay, big deal. But where are you in terms of your spiritual self, in terms of where are you in terms of where you would like to be, etc. It's a purposely generic question, and I very much appreciated the responses. Interestingly, the most common response to the question of when you felt close to God in this constellation, and very often in others, is in nature. And I think we've mentioned before the name Abraham Joshua Heschel. Heschel's book that he's written, I mean, he's written a library, but one of his books called The Sabbath deals with what he terms radical amazement. And he goes through nature just being amazed seemingly perpetually at the song of birds, at the flowers that were there yesterday that aren't there today, and vice versa. And as I said even prior to our beginning today, we're all right now in a snowbound northeast, and I'm looking outside, and it is beautiful and it is magnificent, and yet I want to make sure that I don't take it for granted. And so it's not surprising that the most common response in this cohort to the question of when have you been close to God is in the context of nature. And let's take a look at, even in the Bible, when is it that individuals and as groups, people experience the divine. You were coming close to, we'll be reading, or we've passed already the time when we read about Jacob, who wakes up and says something like, I didn't realize God was in this place, right? So there's that kind of direct connection that an individual feels. And then there are connections that we're reading about now in the book of Exodus, where there's a whole corporate Israel. The entire people of Israel is about to experience what's called a theophany, a divine, quote, revelation. And I think that it's important to note that classically, and then I'm going to stop and take some questions, assuming there are questions. Classically, there are four paths, Jewishly speaking, to have a, quote, relationship with God. One is revelation. Revelation is a direct relationship to God that is shrouded or clouded in mystery, but it is unmediated. It's not rational. In Hebrew, the word is hitgalut. Hitgalut meaning God revealing God's self. That it's not knowledge that is intellectual. It's not through ratiocination. It's not through, I have deduced there is a God because A, B, C, D, E. It's not a mathematical formula. I don't know if you've ever had a chance to take a look at a book by David Brooks called How to Know a Person. And that book, in many respects, relates to this concept of revelation. How do you really know someone? Not just recognize their face or their voice, but know someone. And then he asks, how many people can you really know in the course of a life? And the kind of intimate, direct, unmediated knowledge of God is what we're, as I said, reading about in the Bible now, in the book of Shmot, in the book of Exodus. It reaches its climax in chapter 20 with the Aseret HaDibrot, with the recitation, if you will, of 10 utterances. And the first two of them, I am Adonai your God who brought you out of the house of bondage, out of Egypt, out of the house of bondage. That's the first commandment. And the second commandment is there shall be no other gods before me. Supposedly, those two commandments, and only those two commandments, were direct and unmediated to all of Israel. Now, where does that myth, as it were, or that perception comes from? You may know that each letter in the Hebrew alphabet is also a number. Is this familiar to you? So, and you'll have to take my word for this at the moment, the word Torah, which is spelled in Hebrew, Taf, Vav, Resh, Hey, adds up to 611. And they said, wait a minute, 611? But there are 613 mitzvot. So what's 611? Well, the Torah of Moses, because then God supposedly delivered the 611 to Moses, plus two, the very first of the first two of the 10 commandments, those were given to everybody, and that's where the 613 comes from. So, I mean, there are lots of different mythologies or stories, if you prefer, about the number 613, but one of the most famous and embedded in rabbinic Judaism is this notion of Torah is 611 plus the first two of the 10 commandments, that equals 613. And that's also a reminder to me that we should have begun with the blessing for Torah. So we'll do it now. Please feel free to join me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu la'asok b'divrei Torah. Praised are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who has given us mitzvot and who has commanded us to engage with words of Torah. So revelation, and then the next one is reason. Somebody asked a wonderful question in our very first session about dogma. Are there things that you, quote, have to believe? And I mentioned at that point, of course, there are songs like Adon Olam that relate to attempts to have created a Jewish dogma. Well, these were, generally speaking, in the medieval period. The medieval Jewry, in terms of theology, was almost obsessed with the idea of there being proofs for the existence of God and specific dogmatic beliefs that were at the center of being a Jew. So when I say, quote, proof of the existence of God, and remember, this is medieval, this is about give or take 1,000 years ago, one of the proofs, and I'm going to use a few quote fancy words and then explain what they mean. One of these proofs is called the ontological proof. The proof of ontology is basically that it's better to be than not to be. And so if God exists, then that is in and of itself a proof, if you will, that it's kind of is circuitous, that for God to be good, for God to be all-knowing, for God to be all-powerful, etc., omnipotent, omniscient, and benevolent, God must exist. So existence ends up being a quality of God that adds to God's goodness, if you will. That proof, generally speaking, was more aligned with Christianity than with Judaism. It's if you're interested in a particular person, you may want to think of somebody like Saint Anselm, lived in the, I think, 11th century. And Anselm was one of the people who developed this ontological proof of the existence of God. And another proof was called the cosmological proof. Cosmos is a word with which you may be familiar. This was a proof that that basically said either it was the case that, okay, I was created and I was created by my parents, and we keep going back, and we either end up with what's called an infinite regression. We keep going back and back and back, and then the proof teaches that at some point there had to be a first cause, an uncaused cause, or what Aristotle called an unmoved mover. There had to be some initial push for creation, for the cosmos to exist, for the universe to exist. And that uncaused cause, or that unmoved mover, or that first cause, is what we call God. Another proof, we just have a couple more, is called the teleological proof. Teleology is the argument from design. So basically, what the people who subscribed to this proof of God claimed was the following: for the world to exist as it does, to imagine that it was all random makes much less sense than that there was an intelligent designer, there was an architect. So it's extrapolating from the existence of the world that there had to be a being, a most intelligent being. And this is interesting now because of AI, by the way. It's becoming increasingly an occupation, a preoccupation, a concern. You know, oh my gosh, yes, there's the concern of, am I going to lose my job because a thing is going to be able to do what I've been doing? There's that level of concern. But bigadol, globally, there's concern. Wow, if we are able to create, not only clone sheep, but if we can create beings that have the ability to think and be generative, and to not just beat us in chess, but procreate and take and live forever, and all of the, seemingly unattainable human tasks. Wow, will we be extinct? Are we creating a being that will take over for us as a species? And that is one of the, I think, doomsday kind of cataclysmic overarching concerns that some thinkers have begun already to raise. So we have those three arguments: ontological, cosmological, teleological, and the last one I'm going to mention is the moral argument. The moral argument for the existence of God is maybe most famous by Kant, Immanuel Kant. Again, somebody who is not engaged in Jewish theology because he was not Jewish. But it's relatable to some ideas in Judaism, because this is the claim that is somewhat in alignment with the very beginning of the Torah, when what human beings do is eat from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. we ate from that tree, quote, as it were, in the Bible, and as a consequence of eating of that tree, God, quote, punishes us and says, oh, if you're going to be moral, then you're going to be mortal. Please, Joseph.
You just raised a question I never thought of in all my life. Why did God create, in addition to what he just did with human beings, why did he create the tree of knowledge separate from maybe any other tree? If it wasn't to be there for somebody to, to partake in.
It's a a beautiful question. Now, remember, there are in the story in Torah, there are a couple of trees. There is the tree of knowledge of good and evil, right? And then there's Eitz HaChaim, the tree of life. And the quote fear expressed in the Torah is that once we humans became capable of making moral judgments, we would then seek to eat from the tree of life and become, quote, like God, become immortal. And the punishment was, as a consequence, that we were, but by the way, remember, we were instructed, or Adam and Eve were instructed not to eat of this tree, right? So we were given an instruction. We failed, in quotation marks, to live by this instruction. And as a consequence of that, quote, failure, we ended up having to do labor. And I mean in both senses of the word. Labor meaning birth will come through labor, and men and we will have to work for production. Now, we even have blessings, by the way, like hamotzi lechem min haaretz is actually to bring forth bread from the earth, which is basically what that translates to. That is actually not a description of life. That is a messianic blessing. That blessing is from basically before Adam and Eve ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. That blessing says we pray for a time in which we won't have to work to make bread. So we have this ongoing dialogue between how can we access, quote, paradise, the Garden of Eden? How can we live in a world at peace? How can we live without having to engage in combat and in competition? And supposedly, the response to that is, if we want to try to get back to the time before human beings, quote, disobeyed the only mitzvah that we had, which was don't eat from that tree, that we are seeking somehow to engage in what's called tikkun olam. We're supposed to repair a world that we broke. We broke it. So, Emily, that's the myth. That's the context for this. So, why did God create this? God created one of the responses is God created this construct because God wanted us to be the being that would obey God, that would be in relationship with God. Why do parents say, or teachers say, here are the things that are good. I'd like you to do these things. Don't lie. Why? We know it's really kind of a waste because we human beings lie. We know that. If we were to now take a poll and say, okay, who would agree that slander is wrong? I think would be unanimous, wrong. But if we said, okay, who has committed slander, that would also be unanimous. It would be all of us. We do things that we know are wrong. That is part of being a human. And that's the conundrum in which, this is all taking place. I realize it's not particularly satisfying. We'd like to be able to say QED and we fix it, but that's not that's not the universe in which we live, and that is one of the challenges that underlies Jewish theological thinking. Is that helpful in any way?
It to me, hello,
Yeah.
you hear me?
Yes.
To me, it raises another question. I don't remember. Remind me. Did Adam and Eve taste from the tree of good and evil before
Yes.
they
Yes, that's what they
before
did.
they went to the before they tasted from the tree of knowledge?
That it's the tree. It's a certain kind of knowledge. It's the knowledge of ethics, moral judgments. That was the tree they ate from, and as a consequence, at least again according to the biblical myth, that led to their punishment. They had because they didn't eat from the tree of life. That would have given them immortal life. That's what they were unable to do, and that's why they were banished from paradise, because they ate from the tree of knowledge of good and evil. And by the way, this is in response to one of the questions that was asked, I think Ellen asked initially, even before we began, is how are we supposed to relate Jewish values like love and kindness and patience and truth to God? And from the very beginning of the Torah, one of the ways to respond to that question is we have the ability to make moral judgments. We don't often, or at least we don't always, follow and act on what we believe is the best moral judgment, but we have been given, hopefully, the ability to discern right from wrong. I mean, that's, I think, fundamental to human beings. And we would like to believe that that's a virtue. And in the Bible, that virtue is connected in the following way: morality and mortality are inextricably interconnected. I want to mention the two other ways that Jewish theology can work: revelation, reason, and another is a leap of faith. A leap of faith is just, you know what? I'm deciding to believe in God. I do not have a direct relationship to God. So it's not as though God has revealed God's self to me. And I also don't accept any of the rational attempts to prove God's existence. I am just making a conscious choice. That's a leap. And the fourth is tradition, tevya, that I haven't had the direct experience. I haven't agreed to some rational argument, but my ancestors way back 3,000 some odd years ago, they had a revelation, and between them and me is an unbroken chain of tradition. So Tevye wasn't wrong. Tevye was expressing one of the channels, if you will, one of the vehicles that Jews have used and utilized since there's been a Judaism to connect to God, that we accept that in our tradition, it has been passed down to me. I'm a link in a chain, and I am going to share that link with the next generation, with people that I love. And I am opting and choosing to be part of that community. No, I haven't had a direct relationship with God. No, I'm not accepting any of the arguments for reason. No, I'm not making a leap of faith. I am accepting tradition. So those are the four: revelation, reason, leap of faith, and tradition. And I'm sure that there are others. I don't mean to be dogmatic or exclusive in saying, but these are classically, at least in Jewish theology, four vehicles for relating to God and to finding one's sort of theological home. Michelle, uh, if my memory serves me correctly, you were kind enough to send me something that I found quite inspiring and beautiful from your autobiography that relates to your theology and that of one of your parents. Am I correct?
That's a way to put it.
Okay. Well, then you put it the way you understand it, or since it's yours, I don't mean to
Yeah,
appropriate it from you, but you indicated an openness or a willingness to
sure,
share
absolutely.
with our cohort.
I hadn't thought about it as my theology, although clearly anything I have come to understand is derived at least somewhat from that. So that's the thing. But and I read it at Torah study before, so some of you have heard this. But my father, over the last several years of his life, um, tried to write down his what he called his elegy. He ended up titling a short piece his elegy, and the he tried to write it in fuller words, but never succeeded. So ultimately, and we actually, if I
Yes, you should be able to share it.
can I share? Yeah, let's
Yes.
see. How do I?
Go down to where it says share with
I
an
see
arrow.
more. Is share under more? No.
No, it's
Show
un
captions, record, apps, AI. Oh, share. Sorry, I didn't see that. Okay.
Can you
So
press share?
yeah.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
Can
Can
we see
everybody
that
see that?
now? Yeah. My elegy. This is from the unveiling. And of course, my father's name and mother's name are on the other side. But it's my elegy. Life is the reward. We get it first. Now my fateful trip is ended. Content is the worker, though not done. Paying back as want and can, stalled in career and out of time, yet happy with my share of reality and glimpse of infinite that was, is, and shall remain, and family and integrity in this rewarding duty. Now God's presence, earth and the sun and the rain. Having read that, I will not tell you I understand. Don't ask me to explain it. So
Are you able to stop sharing or not?
that's what I'm trying to figure out how to do. Uh, Zoom. Oh, here we go. Stop share. Okay. Sorry.
No, don't be sorry. If
Yeah,
anything,
it's just fine.
absolutely
It's
don't be
fine. They
sorry.
move the buttons every time they do an update.
Yes. Well, they like challenging us.
Yeah.
Uh, thank you. I invited Michelle to share that with us, not only because I personally found it inspiring, but I think it is indicative of what's possible. It's what's called an existence proof that each of us, in different ways, does have the capacity and opportunity to crystallize and synthesize what for us is essential. It kind of makes us us. I think I may have mentioned before that pretty much every day for the last, I don't know, 40 years-ish, um, I say something like the following prayer. I'll say it first in Hebrew and then in English. Adonai lamdeni limnot et kol birchotai laharichotan ulaharichotan. O God, teach me to count the blessings in my life, to appreciate them, and to prolong them. And that to me is very personal. It's not a prayer. It doesn't exist in the Siddur or the Machzor or some other document, but it is, for me, kind of a life orientation. And thank you, Barbara. Take care. So as a consequence of sharing that, and the beautiful piece that Michelle shared from her father, my hope is, whether you decide to do this privately or publicly on Shavuot, that you will feel empowered, maybe more than once, to experiment with responding to whatever a prompt is that is meaningful to you, whether it is, when have you felt close to God, or what are you grateful for in the course of your life, or what have you experienced at some point in your autobiography that has enabled you to kind of surmount some of the challenges that everybody and struggles that everybody has in different ways in the course of life, that you would like to, live on beyond you. One of the ways that this is done in Jewish life has been to write an ethical will. All of us, I suspect, have a will that we have written, we have composed with respect to our material life, who we would wish to receive tangible items. Well, it's been I won't say a preoccupation, but it's been an occupation within Jewish life over the course of thousands of years already, to leave kind of a moral legacy, an ethical legacy, a spiritual legacy, and some of the more some very famous people like Rambam, and many others have written these ethical wills, and the Gaon of Vilna, but other ethical wills have been written by both men and women in an effort to indicate what are, and this again goes back to the question I think that that was posed earlier, but that Ellen posed. What are some of the values that I hope to live beyond or leave beyond my physical presence? That's another perhaps point of entry into an expression of what your Torah is. In terms of the one brief prayer that I shared with you, I actually added to it. It didn't exist in that exact way until I was about 30 years old, maybe 35 years old, and after I became a parent, actually. In Hebrew, it happens to be a homonym, laharich and laharich. One is with an ayin, and one is with an aleph. With an ayin, the word means to appreciate. So to appreciate the blessings in my life. And then I added it with an aleph, so it sounds the same, laharich, but laharich is to prolong. Because I don't know about you, but I know one of my weaknesses is that I tend to remember failures a lot longer than successes. And I tend to remember losses longer than I remember triumphs. So that kind of a crass example, when I was a rabbinical student, I somewhat like Rabbi Blake and as well used to do a fair amount of singing, and I was serving as the kind of intern rabbi cantor at a congregation, and it was just after Yom Kippur, and I was exhausted. And people had come up to me and, oh, this was so wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. And I remember none of the thank yous, but I remember one comment. Somebody came up to me, and this was, let's see, 1980. So how long ago is that? 45, 46 years? Somebody came up to me and said, when are you going to reach puberty? I mean, I remember that like I remember, what the weather was yesterday. Uh, and, obviously it was an unbelievably mean and rude thing to say. I mean, I looked young, but so be it. So what? And I could sing like a countertenor. I mean, but why say that to somebody? But that I remember. So for me, it's been a practice to seek to not allow joy to be evanescent, not allow happiness to be ephemeral, but to try to live in those celebratory moments. And so I'm sharing this with you because A, it's personal, it's autobiographical, and for me, it's also theological. Why do I say it's theological? Because I'm seeking to change my attitude, to influence how I am, because I want to influence who I am. I want to seek to change my character. I want to seek to say, Jan Katzew, you do not have to accept who you have been up until now. You can grow. You can grow to allow yourself, give yourself permission to experience joy, not just in the moment, but let it live in you. Let it stay with you. So, what I'm trying to suggest is theologically, one of the ways that I think theology can function in the same way that I mentioned radical amazement, and in the case of Abraham Joshua Heschel, he was going to make sure that his moment in nature, when it was beautiful, was not going to be restricted to that moment. He was going to bring it as much as possible into his life. And so, one of the things I'm suggesting that you may wish to do theologically and autobiographically is think about moments that have brought a smile to your face and see how it might be possible that not to bury those moments, not to suppress those moments, not even just to leave those moments where they lie, but to revivify them, to resurrect them, to bring them to life, and enable them to live, to inhabit you, so to speak, and to become even more a part of you. And I'm thinking back even to the very first thing that we read by Rabbi Laura Geller. And she mentioned several of these moments, but I'm thinking of the one right now about one of the reasons she became who she was. And she just celebrated the 50th year of her ordination, by the way, this year, right now. And my recollection is from her autobiography. She learned that her Abba, her father, after years, if not decades, of holding grief, was able to speak to a rabbi, receive a story that for him was comforting, for him enabled him to lift himself, to find light where there had only been darkness for him, and to smile where there had only been a sense of pain in relation to a very young child, their child, who had died prior to Rabbi Geller's birth. And I don't know any of you well enough to know what might be buried in your soul, so to speak, that can somehow be brought back to life in an effort that would be healthy and helpful to you. Judith.
I'm an eternal optimist. I have a song that I love by Debbie Friedman, You Turn My
Yes.
Mourning into Dancing, Mourn. And I've advised my rabbis, my cantors, my friends, this is the song I once sung at my funeral. Because I feel that I've called myself a lucky lady. And I think part of my eternal optimism is that I'm older and I'm not struggling in life. I've lived my life. Thank God. Life has not been beautiful all the way, but things have ended up beautifully with my husband. We've had, ups and downs not in our marriage, but in our lives. But
Yes.
we ended up very happy with each other. And he was legally blind, but he walked with a cane. And I said, "You're going to hurt someone with that cane," because he went back and forth. He said, No, they get away from me. It was like Moses parting this. I just find my sister and my sister-in-law died recently. And it was very, very sad for me. There was January. It was also my wonderful Yvonne's yahrzeit. It was a hard January. But my son was born in January. And I just go to the cycle of life. And fortunately, these were people of age, of a certain age, where it wasn't tragic, it was sad. But it was the day my son was born on in January. My sweet sister died 4 years ago, right after Yvonne. The day she died, her sixth great grandchild was born. And I go to the prayer that we say, would it be good if we all live forever now and there was no new life and there was new. So that's a lot of where I am. And I've talked to people in general about, we're in a horrible state in our country, our world. But we who are sitting around here are so lucky. We have to suffer for others. We have to want to do something for others. But on the other hand, we have strength in who we are and where we are. And I've talked to friends who are desperate listening to the news. And they've walked away. Thank you, Judy. I just think there are ways to pull together things. And I think this is all related to God. I do. And I think I said it before, God is a hard name because it's respected in one way and it's dismissed in others. And when we talked about being, there's a personification that sort of turns you off. When we heard Martin Luther King, his statement, one of our sessions.
Yes.
But if that's what people believe, and they're not thinking he is a person, or even if they are thinking of he as a person, if it's inspiring someone and it's lifting them up by what he is doing, then that's a good thing. And I have to just get my prejudice of the word he out of my mind and think of what the intent of Martin Luther King's words were. So I just think there are very different ways of looking at things in life. And I think a lot of what I'm thinking now in my state of mind is because I'm 85 and reflecting on my life, which has been a great one. And I have friends and clergy and people like you to inspire me.
And we have you to inspire us. Thank you. Joseph.
Just want to comment on what Judy said. I've known her a long time, and I know this to be true. And from what she just said, it's obvious that she was a fantastic and great teacher.
And is and continues to be. Look, I don't know how anyone in particular, say, feels even during or after these sessions, but I know how I feel. I do obviously love this stuff, and it is an honor, to be with people like each of you, recognizing that every person in this room is the smartest person in the room. Let's face it, depending upon the subject, so to speak. And I find exhilarating the opportunity to learn from, with, and about each of you. And I think that's also a choice. That's an orientation. We do get to make choices in our lives about how we show up in the world. And I think that can be very empowering. And I'm heartened and I would say strengthened by learning from and listening to each of you. Grateful for my elegy that we heard earlier, and just the willingness not just to show up physically, but to be as fully present as possible in this space. I don't take that for granted at all, and I'm very moved that each of you has brought your whole self, as it were, to this. I'm going to share a couple of screens and explain them if I can. I want to make sure that everybody can see this. I'm trying to make it larger if I can. One second. Shoot, I have a feeling that's about as big as I can make it, but let me see. Oh, heck. That's not what I wanted. Can everybody see 613 mitzvot distilled to one? Okay. This is in the Talmud. It's from a part of the Talmud called Makot, which actually means plagues, or in some way to be hit. And right at the end of this Masechet, the end of this tractate, there is an extended commentary by Rav Simlai, who says, okay, people aren't going to be able to remember 613 mitzvot. No one can, have that in mind all the time. Can't we reduce the number? So they go through a whole litany, and we can reduce it to 20 with 10, etc. And then finally, and this is the end of it, they decide to see how possible it is to distill all of the mitzvot into one. And I think that this may be helpful, another way of perhaps being helpful to understand of the foundation of Jewish theology. So Isaiah established the 613 can be on a foundation of two. So says God, observe justice and perform righteousness. That is Isaiah's attempt to crystallize and distill all of the mitzvot into two: observe justice and perform righteousness. But Amos came and established the 613 mitzvot and said, okay, I can reduce, I can name that tune in one note. And the words in Hebrew are dirshuni vichyu, seek me and live. So Amos is saying that the process of living a life of mitzvot is to pursue God, and pursuing God and living, making a conscious choice whenever we have a choice to live life. And because, believe it or not, rabbinic argument is not new to the 21st century, another rabbi comes and says, wait a minute, I have a rejoinder. Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak objects, and he cites the prophet Habakkuk and says, the righteous person shall live by his, and I added, her faith. And I'm curious, I posed a couple of questions here. Seek me and live, and the righteous person shall live by faith. What, if anything, do those two texts have in common? You can feel free to unmute yourself and respond if you have a response.
They both assume a God.
Yes, they absolutely both assume a God, especially the first one. The second one, a righteous person shall live by faith. So remember what we said before about ways to God, not by reason, not by revelation, not by tradition, but by, according to Habakkuk, a personal decision, a leap of faith. Any other comments on what these two verses say in common? Anyone else? Yes, Joseph.
Habakkuk's statement requires the question, faith in what?
Ah, yes. Yeah. Or in whom? Or yes, it is clearly open-ended. It is nonetheless a leap. It isn't based on fact. It isn't based on argument. And it leads, in essence, from my perspective, to the second question here. How do you personally cope with uncertainty? How do you live with doubt? Where do you place that? Assuming that you do live with doubt of some kind. Because faith and doubt are two sides, obverse sides of the same coin. Where is doubt in you? Michelle.
I decided it doesn't matter. No matter what, Judaism has a lot to say about how to live.
Thank you. Ellen?
I also think that those quotes, one directly and one indirectly, imply action and living faith, or living in a way that helps you find faith. That it's an active pursuit.
Yes, absolutely. It's not reducible to belief. It is expressed in ultimately action and practice. And Jewish life in general is this ongoing dance between belief and practice. How is it? Oh, I know a kind person. Well, how do you know a kind person? What does the person do that's kind? I know a loving person. Well, show me the love, so to speak. Karen, take care. Thank you so much. Wonderful to see you. Great. And anyone else? How do you live with uncertainty and doubt? Alan.
We're all revealing a lot of personal stuff because this is kind of a safe room. From time to time, I find myself in an Orthodox synagogue davening from an art scroll siddur, and my eyes go back and forth between the English and the Hebrew. And it's amazing to me how many different ways we have in our tradition to praise God.
Yes.
However, for the last 2 years, I actually found myself shaking my head in disbelief in reading the prayers and living in the world that we're living in. But it doesn't, I think doubt is the wrong word. I think it's just questioning a Hashem, when will things change for the better? So it's not quite disbelief.
Yes. Yes. No, I would say personally that that's very healthy to see and to live in the dissonance between what it is that we're saying and what it is that we're seeing. And hopefully, you don't feel alone in that. Hopefully, not only in this, as you said, safe space, but in other safe spaces, that your questioning or uncertainty or doubt or sensing the dissonance between reality and the hope or faith or expressions, in particular of praise. And by the way, there are multiple forms of prayer. Yes, there are the prayers of praise. There are also prayers of petition, where we're asking directly, as it were, God to do something. And then there are prayers of awe, of just being overwhelmed by the power of any kind of infinite being. But the Orthodox, and I'll see you, Judith. I'll call you on you in a moment. The Orthodox Siddur, and it will be interesting at some point to compare both translations of the same prayers that exist in the Reform Siddur and in Mishkan Tefillah and in an Orthodox Siddur, and also to see which prayers don't exist in the Reform Siddur that do exist in the Orthodox Siddur. Why is it that the creators, the editors of the Reform prayer book intentionally omitted specific prayers that are in the Orthodox prayer book? We didn't do that with the Torah. We don't have a Reformed Torah. We have a Reformed commentary on the Torah, but we don't have a Reformed Torah. But we do have a Reformed Siddur, and they reflect some clearly different theologies. I'll just give you one example so it's concrete. There is a prayer in an Orthodox Siddur that begins with the words, Mipnei chata'enu galinu me'artzenu. Because of our sins, we were exiled from our land. That is not in the Reform Siddur. Nowhere. In any Reform Siddur since the birth of the Reform movement. Because a connection between, quote, our sins and being in the diaspora is not part of Reformed theology. Is that clear? But in Orthodoxy, it's absolutely stated explicitly. Why were we exiled from the land of Israel? Because we sinned. And that is a part of theology that, if this was an Orthodox congregational adult learning context, that's what we would be studying. We would study that prayer. But that's not part of our theology at all. Judith.
Just wanted to mention last night there was a community meeting in Kol Ami with protesting what has been going on in Minneapolis. And the intent was to pray together.
Yes.
And I think just that community prayer and being with others, and they didn't want all the political stuff to get to take over. At one point, Latimer spoke about the awful things that are going on and the reality that we're fighting. But the aim was just to get people, and there were a lot of people there of different denominations and color, and it was just. I think hope is a part of faith too. I mean, you just.
I love that.
Be together, and again, there's the positive part of it all.
Yes,
It's
yes.
awful.
Well,
Let's do something that hey, and hope that things will change.
Yes, I mean that's I don't know if you were reading my mind, but it's just a perfect segue to our last few minutes together, at least in this context, because hope is a choice. David Arno wrote a book entitled "Choosing Hope," which is really quite beautiful. And in that book, he identifies people throughout the Jewish world who are sort of emblematic of having made the choice to hope. And hope is different from optimism in the following sense in Jewish thought. Optimism is the belief that it will get better. Hope is the action that we can make things better. That we are not impotent. We are empowered. We are capable. And that we, in this respect, are in a collaborative partnership with God, so to speak. And we need to consider, well, what's my responsibility now? What am I supposed to be doing? And how is it that I can be part of a, I don't know, hopeful campaign? I was part of a laboratory once. I wish it still existed, but to the best of my knowledge, it does. It was a hope laboratory. It was made up of poets and priests and imams and rabbis from all over, not just the United States. And when we introduced ourselves to the group, we had to do so by choosing what for us were sources of hope. Where do we draw hope from? And it could be texts, it could be poetry, it could be pictures, it could be stories. But I think that question is what and who gives you hope is a powerful theological compass to sort of said, okay, where am I supposed to be? What's my North Star? Where am I going to look when it comes time for me to discern what I should be doing? And I think it's the case that in terms of Jewish thought, there are multiple sources. You probably know, for example, that basically every Haftarah ends with what's called in Hebrew a nechemta. It ends with some type of comfort, something that is positive. So that, for example, in the couple of prophets, in the couple of Haftarot that don't end in that, one of the things that's done is you end up repeating a verse that is in the Haftarah that ends it, because there is supposed to be this sense of uplift, of hope, of comfort that at the end of learning, as it were, from our past. And I think that in general, a benediction, a closing song, all of these are an attempt to end with a note of simcha, of joy, and of tikva, which is hope. And we indeed will end our session with a note of hope. And I'll share with you what I'm going to share, maybe at least one text that for me has been a source of hope that I have personally drawn from. And I just need to find it here. I think this is it. Let's see. No, that's not it. This might be it. Okay. Give me a minute. Here it is. Can you see the words Rav Kook? Right here? No?
Developing a personal theology is what I see.
What do you see?
Cover page for the course.
Developing a personal theology. You'd see the page moving?
No.
Oh, that's weird. Okay, let me see what I'm doing wrong. Okay.
Judy has her hand up.
Yes, I'm sorry. Judy, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that even if there's uncertainty, I always feel certain that I'm with God or God is with me. It's interesting because having read God is in this place, and I did
Yes.
not know it. And
Yes.
all of Joshua Heschel's wonderful books, Between God and Man, they have instilled a feeling within me in my old age, because I didn't start to really do this till I guess I was in my 40s. Even if I feel uncertain, I feel certain that God is with me. And it's a wonderful feeling because it does give me hope.
Well, yeah, and indeed, probably the most famous psalm and the most famous verse in the 23rd Psalm is, though I walk through the valley of death, right, in the shadow of evil, I do not fear. Why? Because God is with me. So there is very much within the Psalms and within Jewish theology in general a sentiment that we are not alone. That
Man is not alone.
yes, exactly. And you, as you cited, Abraham Joshua Heschel is exemplary of that. Now let's try this. If I can, let's see. Let's see if this is. Tell me what you see.
Rav Kook. We see Rav Kook.
Ta-da. Okay. So this is one of the texts that gives me personally hope. Rabbi Elazar taught, students of Torah increase peace in the world, as it is said, and all your children shall be taught of Adonai, and great shall be the peace of your children. There are those who mistakenly think that world peace can only come when there is a unity of opinions and character traits. Therefore, when scholars and students of Torah disagree and develop multiple approaches and methods, they think that they are causing strife and opposing shalom. In truth, it is not so, because true shalom is impossible without appreciating the value of pluralism intrinsic in shalom. And this is one of my favorite sentences, period. The various pieces of peace come from a variety of approaches and methods which make it clear how much each one has a place and a value that complements one another. Even those methods which appear superfluous or contradictory possess an element of truth which contributes to the mosaic of shalom. Indeed, all the apparent disparate approaches, in all the apparent disparate approaches, lies the light of truth and justice, knowledge, fear, and love, and true light of Torah. To me, this is kind of full circle from where we began with all theology is autobiography. Each of us is going to bring a unique perspective. And rather than seek uniformity or agreement in Jewish life, that is not the goal. Peace comes when I realize I only have a piece of the truth. We need each other to have the mosaic. We need each other to have puzzle pieces, as it were, autobiographies that intersect with one another. Life is a team sport. And we, over the course of a life, get to discern who is going to be on our team and on whose team we can participate. And sometimes it'll be people we love, and sometimes it'll be people with whom we compete, and other times it'll be people with whom we work, and other times it'll be people with whom we play, and other times, I hope, as it is, I hope for you at WRT, it'll be with people with whom you pray. And
Rabbi,
yes,
it's just
I'm finished.
the
Go ahead.
shortcoming of religious extremism.
Exactly. That's why I sought to relate this to. I get worried when anybody is absolutely certain that they have the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. That's me. That to me is the scariest part of any religion, of any human. It's when there is no room for anyone else to add to that person's understanding of truth. And I think I shared in one of our sessions together the experience that we had when we visited, Lainey and I visited New Zealand, and I raised the question of the wonderful guides who were with us, who said to me, "Oh, we've offended you by sharing something about what we did with as pro-Palestinian protests." And I said, "No, you didn't offend me. You shared your truth." My question to you is, can you hear mine? Can we hear each other's truths? Can we hear and learn from and listen to each other's autobiographies and ultimately each other's theologies? It's, as I already said, it's been a zchut, it's been an honor and a joy to spend these sessions with you. And I have learned clearly more than I possibly could have taught from this opportunity to think about and to learn from each of you about your own autobiographies and the theologies that are expressed in them. Joseph, you have the last word.
Oh, I don't know if it's the last word, but I know I'm speaking more than myself. It's been wonderful and a pleasure to learn with you and learn from you. You seem to be the kind of guy I would like to have as a friend, a neighbor, and a brother. Thank you very much for everything.
Very true.
My pleasure and honor.
You're a
I
blessing
hope
to the
that
Jewish people.
everybody can stay warm, I hope. Yes, Norman. What?
No, I was just saying that you are truly a blessing to the Jewish people.
Yeah.
And I can't thank you enough for everything you do.
Thank
My
you.
pleasure.
Thank you.
God bless you.
Really.
You too. An early Shabbat Shalom. Take care.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Rabbi.